Joining us this morning is former Atlanta Fed President Dennis Lockhart. We got through Powell's hearing. Dennis, I wonder what you think the mission is for Brainard.
I think she will say things very close to Jay Powell. I don't think there's any reason why she would create some distance between herself and the chair. The consensus on the committee, I think, is pretty solid. So I would expect what Powell said, you'll hear repeated in one way or another by Lael Brainard.
Some of the opening statements this morning, kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, taking Brainard to task for an emphasis on climate policy at the Fed, something that Powell says will be a priority. I wondered, at what point does the Fed need to more vociferously defend that position?
Well, I think you're making a good point. Probably the defense needs to be made. There's a lot of kind of what I would call sloppy thinking about this. All that the Fed has said, in my reading at least, is that they will factor climate effects into supervision and regulation policy, not into monetary policy per se. And yet this seems to me to have gotten a bit muddled, where people are thinking, well, interest rate policy is going to be a function of the last hurricane. And that's simply not the case. So I think some clarification is called for.
Oh, that's interesting. As for the pace of policy itself, we've got Harker, Daly, Bullard just in the past 48 hours, either suggesting March is the time or for the year. Are you surprised at the level of I guess the consensus among some of the ranking Fed officials?
I'm really not surprised. I think the data evidence is so strong that that there is an inflation problem that needs to be addressed. That the committee has tightened up and they've come around. I'll point out that John Williams speaks tomorrow at the Council on Foreign Relations, and I think it'll be interesting to see if he signals anything particularly. So my view, Carl, is that it's hard for me to imagine why they would not move in March. And, I just think the stars have aligned for a first rate hike in March.
So, Dennis, I mean, we can talk about rate hikes. We can talk about the balance sheet and potentially seeing a runoff there. I'm starting to see the notes circulate now about taper and this idea of maybe tapering the taper much more quickly, potentially seeing something like that end in January, even ahead of time, given the fact that inflation is running so hot. Is that on the table too?
Well, I think the way I would think about it is there is a small chance that they would come out of the meeting on the 25th and announce that they have simply finished the tapering process. And I would say a non-zero but very unlikely chance they would go ahead and make a rate move, given the consensus that it clearly exists. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that would surprise markets and surprise the public and could signal a certain degree of panic or alarm. So I think it's unlikely they will do that. But your point is, could they taper faster? I think yes. I think they could announce that on the 25th, that it's done.